Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. We are continuing with Johnnykin and the Goblins. So, we're on the what's known as the spelling bee that goblins like to play. And we'll continue where we left off. Can you spell well, my dear? Asked the goblin of Johnnykin. W-E-L L, he answered. Very good. That is a double answer. So, I shall give you some double spelling. How you spell charitable, he continued. C-H-A-R-I-T. Dear, no, that will never do. How do you spell it, sir? Asked Johnnykin. Why, with 3 letters. The same that are used in hat, was the reply. I don't understand you, said Johnnykin, staring. Look here, said the goblin. The 4, that is, the owl, the goblin, the gargoyle, and the Johnnykin, were seated each with one side of an old grey tomb before him, as if at whist. The goblin took out a piece of chalk and drew on the slab the following: H. There, he exclaimed. That's a H, isn't it? Well, that's a ch, isn't it? Yes, sir, replied Johnnykin. And this is the letter A, he added, drawing again an A. Of course. And this is a table. T. Yes. Well then, my dear, look at this. H-A-T. And tell me if it doesn't spell charitable. That's the way we goblins always spell it. Oh, it's very ingenious, replied Johnnykin. But can you prove it's quite the right way? Of course it's right, said the owl. Don't they always pass round a hat for charity, supposing there's no plate? Johnnykin was quite bewildered at this, and the goblin went on, talking of chairs and tables. Can you spell bedstead? Johnnykin began with B-E-D, but was interrupted again. Too much. This is our way of spelling it, Johnnykin, my dear. Saying this, the goblin drew a very long H. But, said Johnnykin, I object to such a method, because, of course you do, said the gargoyle. And so you ought. Don't you see that this is what is called the object teaching, by which objects are substituted for letters? The teacher objects, and of course, then, well, as you should know, the scholars ought to. Johnnykin looked steadily at him, but said nothing. The trouble in your case, Johnnykin, said the goblin, is that you did not begin rightly from the beginning. I don't suppose you even know your alphabet as you should. You know too many letters. Now, how many are there? 26, sir. The goblin shook his head very sadly. There was a murmur of grief from all present. Too many, he sighed. No, Johnnykin, no. There are only 12. For instance, he said, taking his chalk and drawing a letter on the tomb, and in the centre, what's this? I should call it an old italic M, said Johnnykin. Now, to me, it just looks like an old W, said the owl. Oh, sat opposite him, of course. "I call it a B," cried the gargoyle. "And I an E," added the goblin. "But we are all quite right," he added. "All quite right. So you will observe, if you please, that PQDB are all the same letter." "That is making 4 out of 1, said Johnnykin, who was much interested in this new method. "Exactly. Quartering it, as one may say. But the letter which you quarter is the double W with which you begin. And if you put all those together, you will get the Celtic clover or a butterfly. So you see that the 7 letters are all really one, for there are P, B, D and Q again. Only a little changed by time. Then you can make 5 out of 1 letter if you're not too particular as to shape. None of these gentlemen are, I believe." The owl and the gargoyle bowed very low to show that they quite agreed with him. "Well, take N. What does that make?" "Why, N, Z and S, of course. The last letter is a combination of V and A. You may remember it by Victoria and Albert." "But the A isn't crossed," said Johnnykin. "No more it ought to be," said the owl. "Albert never were crossed in anything that ever heard of. Well, not that I heard of, anyway. And that none of 'em ever may be is my loving prayer," he loyally added. "Well," said the goblin, "if you please to look at A and D, or C and D, as one letter, you will find yourself much better off than before. Much better off indeed. Even so much better," said the owl. "Quite convalescent, as the doctors say. In fact, after all that, I feel wonderfully like sitting up and taking a little nourishment," he added, looking at the goblin with a grin. The latter replied by taking the chalk and drawing the letter Y 4 times on the tomb for 4 wine glasses. He then made a mark in each to show that they contained liquid. He then picked up each with his fingers, presented it as a real glass full of wine to the company. The owl smacked his bill as he drank. Johnnykin thought he'd never tasted anything quite so nice as this before. "Good wine, Johnnykin, my boy?" asked the goblin. "It's worthwhile being a man of letters, isn't it, when you can turn your letters to such account?" "What do you call the wine?" asked Johnnykin. "Vindigrave, of course," replied the goblin. "Didn't you see? I got it out of the tomb." "I think, sir," said Johnnykin, "I understand how you got the glasses." He hadn't the remotest idea in reality, you know, but his droll little mind was always fancying something. "But I can't understand how you got the wine into them." "Dear me," said the gargoyle, "very simple. Didn't you see that he drew it? Did you never hear of drawing wine before? There are a great many people who draw all their wine, and beer too, from the tavern, by means of chalk marks. I know a man once," he added very slowly, as if thinking over old time, "named Rip Van Winkle. He drew thousands of pounds worth of liquor in that very way. If he drunk so much, he must have been very sleepy after it," said Johnnykin. "So he was. He slept 25 years. I saw him asleep myself. And I shall be sleepy myself," said the owl, "unless I have a pipe, I say," he added, turning to the goblin. "Couldn't you find some tobacco?" The goblin replied by taking his chalk and drawing a letter P. Taking this up, he rolled out the stem on the stone and bent it a little after drawing it out into the shape. This made a very good pipe. He then drew a bird with a very large eye. This, he said, is what is called a Bristol bird. Taking the bird up, the owl filled his pipe from it. "How is it that you find tobacco there, sir?" asked Johnnykin. "Don't you see it in the bird's eye?" replied the owl. Johnnykin said nothing, but he could not help thinking that his uncle would have liked to know such a cheap and easy way of obtaining his tobacco. He then took another sip of the wine, finding it nicer than before, and holding it up as he had seen grown-up gentlemen do. He then thought it looked very pretty in the moonlight, and saw a star shine through it, which made a very pretty fairy bee's wing, when all at once he observed something very curious, which was that the glass was full as ever. He at once inquired the reason of this. "Ah, Johnnykin, my boy," replied the Goblin, "I'm afraid you are very ignorant. Don't you know that every liquid always keeps its proper level, owing it to the pressure of atmosphere?" "I've heard so," answered Johnnykin, after thinking a little. "Well, and isn't the proper level of a glass full of wine at the brim?" "I should say so," remarked the owl. "No sharp measure for me." "Very good. Therefore the wine is every honest glass never gets below the brim. Honest glasses are full-sized ones. This, Johnnykin, is what is called a law of hydrostatics. And as a good citizen, I consider it my duty to see that the law is never broken." "Until the glasses is," remarked the owl, very solemnly. Johnnykin observed that the owl had been testing the law very thoroughly ever since he had received the glass. "I am sure," said Johnnykin, "that I am very grateful to you for telling me all this, but I should like to know how is it that I am able to see all these wonders, what other people cannot?" "The reason is," replied the Goblin, "that you are spiritually eyed. You don't know much about spelling," he added gloomily. "How are you an arithmetic?" "If it's to be goblin arithmetic," exclaimed Johnnykin, "of course it is. There's no fun in common arithmetic." "Now answer. How many do you and I make?" "Two," answered Johnnykin. "No! We make 101 trillions and 111 billions 201,814,222. See here." And with his chalk the Goblin wrote it out thus. He wrote out Johnnykin and Goblin, and underneath he put the numbers 101, 111, 201, 814, 222. Those are our names, and as they are made up of figures, of course, they are correct and add up. "Then you must have a whole alphabet of figures," said Johnnykin. "Of course, and here it is," answered the Goblin, as he wrote it all out. "Now, our old people say that if you write your name according to this figure alphabet, it will show you how many farthings you will spend, if you have the luck to get them. But according to others, it gives the number of seconds you'd like to live. And some say it sets forth a number of foolish wishes you might make. When you've made the last one, then you might be happy. You see by this, however," he added, "that spelling and arithmetic are all the same thing. It saves ever so much time to learn them both together. That's the reason our children have so many holidays. They learn everything at once and all together in one lesson. But look out," he cried hastily, "here's the company coming." As he said this, there was a distant rushing as of many wings, and the sound of light voices far away, and then a fairy chorus as deliberate as if the night flowers were singing, while with it rang soft bell tones like church chimes, and a lute and flute music, all as merry as one could be, but as mad as one could be also. And then came a sudden shout, and a fluttering and whirring high in the air overhead. Then silence, broken by one loud peal of solitary laughter. Then Johnnykin saw so many strange, shadowy forms lighting and leaping to the top of the old church tower. In an instant, hundreds came rustling through the ivy, head over heels, rollicking and frolicking like wild school children they were. And that's that part finished, guys, of Johnnykin and the Goblins. We shall continue on the next part. Thank you for listening and many blessings.